ಇದೊಂದು ಕನೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಹಾಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಇದನ್ನೇ ಕೊರಡೆ ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಡ್ರಲ್ಲ ಅಷ್ಟೇ, ನೆನಪು ಹೋಗುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ? 95. 102. ಕುಂತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕೆ ಆಗಲಿಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ಕೈಯಲ್ಲಿ. A very good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
So today we will
morning,
start
sir.
with the central nervous system. It is in continuation of nerve physiology. I was telling you earlier, majority of the issues, whatever I was discussing under nerve physiology, may be directly connected to classes relating to central nervous system. The very first class from central nervous system, I am going to speak on organization of central nervous system. Nervous system comprising of central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, nerve fibers, neurons, neuroglia, somatic and visceral nerves, then afferent and efferent nerves. On the next slide I will talk about those issues. So nervous system, under which I will be discussing regarding the central nervous system. Central nervous system comprising of central core, that is brain and spinal cord, which are occupying the central axis of the body. The second one is the peripheral nervous system, which lies outside the central nervous system, available in the periphery. So then the nerve fibers, so which are present in the head, neck, limbs and trunks. Then neuron at the end I will brief up, because I had already discussed this under nerve physiology, neuron and neuroglia. Then you have to know about somatic and visceral nerves. Somatic nerves, which are the nerves which are supplying different somatic or skin related structures, and visceral nerves which are supplying different viscera. So yes, structures relating to viscera. This will be constituting autonomic nervous system. Visceral nerves, under which we will discuss about two entities. One will be afferent visceral nerves, which will be bringing the information from the viscera. Next one will be efferent visceral nerves, which are bringing information to smooth and cardiac muscles as well as endocrine glands. I was talking to you about sensory and afferent nerves. They are also grouped under nervous system. Yes, sensory or afferent nerves, which are bringing information to the central nervous system. Motor or efferent nerves, which bring the information, which supply the muscles, skeletal, cardiac or smooth muscles or exocrine glands. Accordingly, in case of skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle and smooth muscle will result in the motion, as well as in case of endocrine glands, it will cause the movement of the secretion, exocrine glands secretion, and conveying the commands from the higher part of the brain or the pyramidal tract to the lower part of the spinal cord. They are called as motor fibers. Central nervous system containing 1000 billions of neurons. All the neurons that are formed during intrauterine life only. They are all formed during intrauterine life. No new neuron will be formed after death, formed after birth. Yes, no new neuron will be formed after birth. In old age, 60% of the neurons are surviving, cannot learn sufficiently rapidly. So yes, we are talking about old age, senility, wherein you are going to expect 40% of the neurons are getting damaged or eliminated. Only 60% of functional neurons will be available. As a result of which, one can say that the ability of learning may not be sufficient, may not be rapid in case of old people. It is through synapse. In the next class on Saturday, I am going to talk about this synapse. So by virtue of synapse, it is possible to have new information, accumulation of new information, assimilation of new information, incorporation of new information. Then loss of brain matter due to aging is being seen more so in case of male in comparison to female individual. Male individuals are going to have loss of brain matter with more magnitude in comparison to the counterpart. As child grows in breadth and length, the length of neuron increases. The length of neuron increases as the child grows in breadth and length. During the first year of postnatal life, some neurons in man also increase in their number. So it is being postulated that during the first year of postnatal life, some of the neurons may also increase in the number. It is not definite. Neuroanatomists thought that human brain looks like a tree. Hence, individual parts are named accordingly. So as a tree has a stem, brain also has a stem. So that brain stem is available with us now. Brain stem is composed of following entities from upwards to downwards: midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. First one will be the midbrain, then second one will be the pons, third one will be the medulla oblongata. So then brainstem is connected to two massive lobes. They are called as cerebral hemispheres. Brainstem connected to two massive lobes which are called as cerebral hemispheres. Two cerebral hemispheres are separated by a space called as falx cerebri. Two cerebral hemispheres are separated by means of a space which is called as falx cerebri. Two cerebral hemispheres are connected each other by corpus callosum. Many times it is being asked, which is the structure which is responsible for cementing two cerebral hemispheres. Two cerebral hemispheres are connected each other by virtue of corpus callosum. Corpus callosum consisting of nerve fibers. All the diagrammatic details I will provide later. Understood? Most superficial part of each cerebral hemisphere is called as cerebral cortex. Cerebral cortex is the most superficial part of cerebral hemisphere. It is about 2 to 4 millimeter in thickness. Cerebral hemisphere is about 2 to 4 millimeter in thickness. Underneath the cerebral cortex, there lies subcortical matter. So the cortical, underneath the cortex, there lies subcortical matter. Cortex consisting of mostly nerve cell bodies. This cortex consists of nerve cell bodies which has gray appearance. So cerebral cortex appears with gray in color. That is why it is being called as cerebral gray matter. Subcortical matter consisting of nerve fibers which are white in color, called as subcortical white matter. Subcortical matter consisting of nerve fibers with color white and being referred to as subcortical white matter. Within subcortical white matter, there are masses of gray matter consisting of subcortical nuclear masses. Within subcortical white matter, there are masses of gray matter which are composing of subcortical nuclear masses. These nuclear masses consist of nerve cell soma packed up densely with their axons and dendrites. These nuclear masses consist of nerve cell soma packed up densely with their axons and dendrites. They are referred to as subcortical nuclear masses. For example, basal ganglia. So another teacher will talk about basal ganglia. Cortical gray matter sends efferents to many areas of the brain, mostly anterior horn cells of the spinal cord. Cortical gray matter sends efferents to many areas of brain and mostly anterior horn cells of the spinal cord. Subcortical gray matter mass also sends efferents to various other parts of the brain as well as receive various afferent impulses. Subcortical gray matter, gray nuclear mass also sends efferents to various other parts of the brain as well as receive various afferent impulses. Cerebral cortex is divisible into several lobes. Number 1, frontal lobe. Number 2, temporal lobe. Number 3, parietal lobe. Number 4, occipital lobe. How the cerebral cortex is divisible into various lobes? So they are being divisible into frontal lobe, temporal lobe, parietal lobe and occipital lobe. So yes, between frontal and parietal lobes there exists central sulcus. Central sulcus is present between frontal and parietal lobes. Between temporal and frontoparietal lobes there is lateral sulcus. Lateral sulcus is existing between temporal and frontoparietal lobes. Very commonly asked question. What is the situation of central sulcus or lateral sulcus? Central sulcus is situated between frontal and parietal lobes, whereas lateral sulcus is situated between temporal and frontoparietal lobes. Entire cerebral cortex consists of large number of gyri and sulci giving a characteristic appearance. The characteristic appearance which is seen with your cerebral cortex, it is because of presence of gyri and sulci. So gyri and sulci are giving a characteristic appearance to the cerebral cortex. The brainstem, I had already mentioned about the brainstem from above downwards. Midbrain forms medulla oblongata and later on it will continue as spinal cord. Brainstem comprising of the uppermost part as midbrain, middle part as pons, lower part as medulla oblongata. Later and below it continues as spinal cord. Cerebellum. Cerebellum lies under occipital lobe and lies dorsal to the brainstem. What is the location of cerebellum? Cerebellum is present under occipital lobe and it is situating dorsal to the brainstem. Cerebellum is connected with brainstem by means of 3 pairs of peduncles. So there are 2 cerebellar hemisphere, right and left cerebellar hemispheres. These hemispheres are connected to the brainstem by means of 3 pairs of peduncles. 3 pairs of peduncles. These 3 pairs of peduncles can be, first pair will be superior peduncles, middle peduncles, inferior peduncles. Superior peduncle with the midbrain, middle peduncles with the pons, inferior peduncles with the medulla oblongata. They are being connected to the cerebellum. Lower portion of the dorsal side of the brainstem also forms floor of 4th ventricles. 4th ventricle, floor of the 4th ventricle is being formed by the lower portion of dorsal side of brainstem. So it is why a question. So floor of 4th ventricle. So it is representing the lower portion of dorsal side of brainstem. On the superior surface of the midbrain, there are thalami. Thalami are present at the superior surface of the midbrain. One on each side of the midline. Understood? So thalami are situating on the superior aspect of the midbrain. Dorsal side of the thalamus bulges to form pulminar. So their dorsal side of the thalamus bulges to form pulminar. Near pulminar, lateral geniculate body is present. LGB. Lateral geniculate body is present near to pulminar. So on the ventral and inferior of the thalami, hypothalamus is present. Hypothalamus is situating onto the ventral as well as inferior aspect of the thalami. Pituitary gland is hanging from the middle of hypothalamus. From the middle of the hypothalamus, there hangs the gland called as pituitary gland. So ventricles. Each cerebral hemisphere contains within it subcortical white matter called as lateral ventricle. Each cerebral hemisphere contains within its subcortical white matter called as lateral ventricle, which in turn contains a shock absorber, cerebrospinal fluid present in the lateral ventricle, which is present within the subcortical white matter, which is present within the cerebral hemisphere. Medial wall of the lateral ventricle is formed by septum pellucidum. Septum pellucidum is forming the medial wall of lateral ventricle. In between 2 thalami, there exists third ventricle. Third ventricle is present between 2 thalami. Cerebrospinal fluid available from the lateral ventricle moves through the foramen mons through the third ventricle, which is representing the floor, which is the floor of which is formed by hypothalamus, through which it is moving to aqueduct of sylvis, which is representing tunnel running longitudinally through the midbrain and the upper part of the pons and to the 5th ventricle, the floor of which is formed by dorsal side of pons and medulla. So it is very commonly asked question, movement of cerebrospinal fluid from the lateral ventricle moves through foramen Monro to third ventricle. From the third ventricle, it moves to aqueduct sylvius. From the aqueduct sylvius, it moves to fifth ventricle. Understood? The central canal of spinal cord is continuation of fourth ventricle. So fourth ventricle represents dash. Fourth ventricle represents itself as continuation of central canal of spinal cord. Continuation of central canal of the spinal cord is represented as fourth ventricle. Then we have to know about cranial nerves. Everything I will talk about with pictures later on. So yes, cranial nerves from each half of the brain, right half and left half, there emerge various cranial nerves. Cranial nerves emerge from right half and left half of the brain. They are classified into sensory nerves, motor nerves, and mixed nerves. So there are three different types of cranial nerves: sensory nerves, which are afferent in nature and bringing the information from the receptor to the center, and motor, bringing the information from the center to the effector, that is the muscle, and both, which is comprising of both sensory and motor. So there are three varieties. So now sensory, purely sensory, cranial nerve number 1, olfactory for the smell, optic for the vision, cranial nerve number 8, that is vestibulocochlear, that is auditory for hearing. So there are three cranial nerves, 1, 2 and 8. They are sensory. One is for smell, another cranial nerve number 2 for vision, optic, cranial nerve number 8, it is for hearing or audition. Then motor, cranial nerve number 3, oculomotor, movements of the eyeball, extraocular muscles of the eyes are being supplied by oculomotor. Cranial nerve number 3, oculomotor, supplying to, yes, extraocular muscles. I was telling you regarding myasthenia gravis. During myasthenia gravis, I was mentioning you bilateral ptosis. Ptosis means drooping of upper eyelids. Bilateral means both sides. When both sides are affected, it is most likely to be thought about that the individual may be suffering from myasthenia gravis, and also the individual must be having a presentation called as double vision, diplopia. They are the extraocular muscles, are the first group of muscles which can be affected by myasthenia gravis, an autoimmune disease I was telling you. Here, uniocular, so this is a unilateral involvement, unilateral ptosis, PTOSIS. Unilateral ptosis can be due to involvement of the oculomotor nerve on that side. That is third cranial nerve, motor. Extraocular muscles are being supplied by oculomotor nerve, cranial number 3. Then cranial nerve number 4. So trochlea, yes, they are also 3, 4, 6. They are going to supply to extraocular muscles. You are going to talk about eyeball movements. So there is something called as, you are going to test for the movements of the eyeball. So the individual is asked to move the eyeball upwards when the head is held straight and head is fixed with the palm of the examiner. He is asked to look upwards, elevate the eyeball upwards, elevation, move the eyeball downwards, depression, move the eyeball towards the nose, that is yes, intorsion, move the eyeball outside, that is laterally, extorsion, then move the eyeball in all the direction, circumduction. So elevation, depression, that is movement of the eyeball downwards, movement of the eyeball inwards, that is towards the nasal aspect, and it is away from the nasal aspect, that is the temporal side, or lateral side, that is external rotation, internal rotation, circumduction in all the direction. So you are going to say that cranial nerve number 3, 4, 6. They are the cranial nerves which are in association with movements of the eyeball. They are going to supply to the extraocular muscles of the eyes. Understood? Third, fourth, sixth. Third is oculomotor. Fourth is trochlear. Then sixth is abducent. Then ninth and 10th. 11th and 12th. 11th cranial nerve, spinal accessory, then hypoglossal. So spinal accessory and hypoglossal. They are also motor in nature. Hypoglossal regarding the strength of the muscles, intrinsic muscles of the tongue. As a spinal accessory supplying to the sternocleidomastoid muscle, trapezius. So these muscles are being supplied by spinal accessory. So yes, so you have to know about that when you are going to test for the strength of the muscles. Then sensory as well as motor, mixed cranial nerves. Cranial nerve number 5, trigeminal. So you must be knowing this trigeminal by this time. From anatomy knowledge, you are in a position to tell about this. Trigeminal nerve, cranial nerve number 5, trigeminal. So that is ophthalmic division, maxillary division, mandibular division, forehead, chin and cheek. So sensations from these areas are being carried through trigeminal nerve. Then cranial nerve number 7. So that is facial nerve. So facial nerve. So you are already knowing facial nerve. So for the facial expression. So muscles of facial expression are being supplied by cranial number 7. That is facial nerve, which is containing both sensory and motor nerve fibers. Then cranial nerve number 9. Glossopharyngeal. Cranial nerve number 10, vagus. So yes, you are supposed to know about cranial nerve number 9. Say, for example, there is a reflex called as palatal reflex. Palatal reflex. Individual is asked to open the mouth and he is asked to, he is examined for the palatal reflex. So he is asked to tell the word So open the mouth, show the mouth and asked to tell the word, and he is going to be observed for the movement of the palate. So as a result of palatal reflex, palate which is supplied by the cranial nerve number 9 as an afferent. So you are going to see that there is movement upwards of the palate. Understood? Then the efferent nerve for this palatal reflex is 10th cranial nerve, vagus. It is supplying to various areas. Yes, you are already knowing the stimulation of the vagus for the heart. What will happen? What will happen if you are going to stimulate the vagus regarding heart? What will happen? What will happen to the vagus? Stimulation of vagus on the heart. What will happen? It is going to decrease the heart rate. Bradycardia. Force of contraction is also reduced. Strength of contraction is also reduced. Contractility. So all those things, I think Dr. Sumangala must have told about this. Yes, under amphibian experiments, isolated frogs experiment, what is the effect of stimulation of vagus? So as a result of stimulation of vagus, there will be release of acetylcholine. Acetylcholine, if it is going to be influencing on the heart, what will be the effect you are going to see? You are going to see decrease in the force of contraction, decrease in the rate of contraction, decrease in the rhythmicity. Yes, rate and force of contraction, and number of contractions that are occurring also going to be reduced. Bathmotropic effect is reduced. then chronotropic effect is reduced and inotropic effect is also reduced. So you are going to have the effect through your acetylcholine negative influence, that is negative effect on bathmotropic, negatively influencing bathmotropic, negatively influencing inotropic, negatively influencing chronotropic. Understood? So negative influences are being produced by virtue of stimulation of vagus, whereas in case of gastrointestinal tract, stimulation of vagus, it will cause increase in the secretion. So particularly in the case of salivary secretion, it will increase. Gastric secretion, it will increase. Understood? So you have to know that secretion will increase. Vagus going to result in the secretion in the stomach, which is rich in acid. Understood? As a result of which we say that one of the causes for hyperacidity may be hyperstimulation of the vagus in the stomach. So yes, you have to know that. So this is containing both sensory and motor cranial nerves. Understood? Then regarding the brain, you have to know about the parts: telencephalon, diencephalon, mesencephalon, rhombencephalon. Telencephalons, this is representing cerebral hemispheres, which is representing itself as forebrain. Telencephalon representing forebrain. Then diencephalon representing thalamus, hypothalamus, which is in between brain. So diencephalon representing in between brain portion and representing thalamus and hypothalamus. It is diencephalon is situated between telencephalon and mesencephalon. Telencephalon and mesencephalon. What is mesencephalon? Mesencephalon, it is the midbrain. Telencephalon, it is the forebrain. Diencephalon, it is, yes, it is the in-between brain. Then rhombencephalon, it is hindbrain. Rhombencephalon, it is called as hindbrain. This rhombencephalon can be divisible into metencephalon, myencephalon. Metencephalon, it is afterbrain representing cerebellum and pons. Rhombencephalon can be of two groups, metencephalon and myencephalon. Metencephalon, it is representing itself as afterbrain. It is comprising of cerebellum and pons. Myencephalon, it is marrow brain, which is representing medulla. So the brain can be telencephalon, diencephalon, mesencephalon, rhombencephalon. Telencephalon, forebrain, representing cerebral hemisphere. Diencephalon, it is the in-between brain, representing thalamus and hypothalamus, situating between telencephalon and mesencephalon. Mesencephalon is the midbrain and rhombencephalon is the hindbrain. Hindbrain, rhombencephalon, divisible into metencephalon, that is the afterbrain, comprising of cerebellum and pons, and myencephalon, it is marrow brain, which is comprising of medulla. Then spinal cord. Spinal cord, it is the downward continuation of the medulla, descends through vertebral canal till it ends at the level of lower border of L1. Spinal cord ends at the level of lower border of L1. It is the continuation of the medulla, which is the downward extension of the medulla through the vertebral canal and ends at the level of lower border of L1. Below this level, spinal cord proper is absent. So you are not going to see spinal cord proper below this level. Some fibers may continue or continuing as chorda equina. Chorda equina. Some of them are going to continue as fibers as chorda equina, which looks like tail of horse. The cross section of the spinal cord showing outer white matter consisting of tracts, maybe sensory or ascending or motor or descending. Remember terminology, ascending tracts are the sensory tracts, descending tracts are the motor tracts. So whenever we are telling that list the ascending tracts, name some descending tracts. So you should be in a position, ascending means sensory tracts, descending means motor tracts. Outer white matter consisting of tracts containing sensory or motor tracts. Inner gray matter looks like H. Inner gray matter looks like H. Inner gray matter, which will be presenting with three horns. One is anterior horn, second one is posterior horn, third one is lateral horn. Anterior horn, it is containing nerve cell bodies giving rise to somatic motor nerves, which belong to lower motor neuron variety. Lower motor neuron variety. Spinal cord to the effector, spinal cord to the muscles, being referred to as lower motor neuron, supplying to the skeletal muscles. Then posterior horn receiving sensory nerves via dorsal root ganglion, DRG, dorsal root ganglion. Don't get confused against DRG of respiratory neurons. That is dorsal respiratory group of neurons. So Dr. Gabar Banu, she will talk about this one, posterior horn, wherein posterior horn is a dorsal respiratory group of neurons. Now here posterior horn receiving sensory nerves via dorsal root ganglion. Lateral horn is prominent. So yes, which part of the spinal cord segments are presenting with prominence of the lateral horn? Very commonly asked question in Viva. So lateral horn is supposed to be prominent in the thoracic and upper lumbar segments of spinal cord. From these, there arise sympathetic fibers. Sympathetic fibers arise from these segments. From lateral horns of sacral segment 2 and sacral segment 3, there arise sacral autonomic nerves. So very commonly asked question, urinary bladder and our defecation reflex. So associated with nervi erigantis. So nervi erigantis. So sacral autonomic nerves. So emptying of the bladder is associated with nervi erigantis, sacral autonomic nerves arising from the sacral division, sacral part of the spinal cord. Central part of the H, that is the gray matter, which is representing itself as the central canal, which already we have mentioned, it has continuation of fourth ventricle. So fourth ventricle continues as central canal representing central part of H, which is the central gray matter present in the spinal cord. From the anterior horn cells, axons emerge to form ventral root or motor root. Sensory fibers bringing sensory information from various areas enter posterior horn. So yes, you have to know about this particular law, Bell-Megendy law. Always sensory fibers bringing sensory information from various areas enter into the posterior horn. So sensory fibers enter into the spinal cord through the posterior horn is being referred to as Bell-Megendy law. Bellmegendy DIE, Mel-Megendie law. The nerve cell bodies of these sensory neuron situating a little outside the spinal cord and forming dorsal root ganglion. Dorsal root ganglion. How they are being formed? Nerve cell bodies of sensory neurons situating a little outside the spinal cord, forming the dorsal root ganglion. Cells forming the dorsal root ganglion, they belong to unipolar variety. Unipolar, already you are knowing, only one pole. Unipolar, having only one peripheral process which brings impulse from the periphery and one central process. The central process forming the sensory root. There are two roots. One is motor, another one is sensory. They unite a little outside the spinal cord to form the mixed nerve. Preganglionic sympathetic fibers arise from the lateral horn cells situating between thoracic division 1 to lumbar division 2 and accompany ventral motor root. Subsequently, these periganglionic sympathetic fibers leave the motor root to end in a sympathetic ganglion. Sympathetic ganglion is constituted like this. Preganglionic sympathetic fibers arise from the lateral horn cells and accompany ventral motor root, and subsequently these preganglionic sympathetic fibers leave the motor root to end in a sympathetic ganglion. Hence, spinal nerve contains both motor and sensory fibers. Always remember, spinal nerve is supposed to be a mixed nerve which is containing both motor and sensory fibers. So here we will show the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord, peripheral nervous system, peripheral nerve and the enteric nervous system. Here you can see nervous system comprising of peripheral nervous system and central nervous system. Peripheral nervous system comprising of autonomic nervous system and somatic nervous system. Central nervous system comprising of brain and spinal cord. Brain is comprising of forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. So the forebrain is comprising of telencephalon, diencephalon. Forebrain is comprising of telencephalon and diencephalon. Telencephalon is comprising of cerebral cortex, basal ganglia, hippocampus, amygdala. Diencephalon comprising of thalamus and hypothalamus. Then midbrain is comprising of mesencephalon, which is comprising of tectum and tegmentum. Midbrain comprising of mesencephalon, tectum and tegmentum. Then hindbrain comprising of metencephalon and myencephalon. Hindbrain, metencephalon and myencephalon. Metencephalon comprising of pons and cerebellum, and myencephalon comprising of medulla. Then autonomic nervous system comprising of sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So here now we will talk about brain. So under brain, first one we will be talking about, so we have already mentioned regarding the brain in detail. So spinal cord function, it conducts afferent stimuli from the sensory receptors to the brain. We will talk about receptors, how it is going to carry the information. So spinal cord conducts afferent stimuli from the periphery to the brain. Conducts efferent stimuli from the brain to the effectors. So yes, it is going to conduct the commands from the brain to the effectors. Effectors may be muscles or the endocrine glands. Muscles resulting in the contraction movement. Then endocrine gland contraction, release of endocrine secretion, hormones. Exocrine gland secretion, that are enzymes in the process of digestion. Then there will be site of reflex. So spinal cord, one is afferent limb, another one is efferent limb, and third one is the integrating center. So here we will talk about more regarding this in reflex. Anyhow, we will highlight about this spinal cord regarding input and output from the skin or the equivalent structure where receptors are present. Information is gathered from the afferent nerve being brought to the dorsal part of the spinal cord. Integration is going to happen here. Commands are being devised for. Commands are being brought through the ventral root, through the efferent nerve to the effector, maybe the skeletal muscle. From the skin, afferent fiber. This afferent fiber is characterized by having allocation for dorsal root ganglion and dorsal root. This is representing dorsal root entering through the dorsal horn, and that is the posterior root, and integration is happening. From there, information is being brought to the efferent nerve and to the effector. So then spinal cord also important for information, sensory information and motor information. So you have to know about that. One is somatic information, second one is autonomic and somatic motor. Afferent, efferent. Understood? Somatic sensory nuclei, autonomic efferent nuclei, somatic motor nuclei. Understood? So we have to know that this is the dorsal horn, this is the lateral ventral horn, this is the lateral horn. Understood? Collection of axons that ascend or descend the spinal cord with a specific function. So we have to know that there is dorsal column. So dorsal column, this is representing dorsal column, portion for the dorsal column. This is representing spinothalamic tract. This is representing lateral corticospinal tract. So this is dorsal column tract, which is ascending tract that transmit tactile, touch, proprioceptive relating to the muscle. Later on we will discuss under receptors information. Then spinothalamic tract, this is the portion representing spinothalamic tract. Spinothalamic tract, ascending tract, this is the sensory tract that transmits information regarding pain, nociception, temperature, thermal and itch. Understood? So we have to know about that. Spinothalamic tract, ascending tract that transmits information regarding pain, temperature and itch. Then lateral corticospinal tract. So lateral corticospinal tract, which is a descending tract. Understood? So here, so we have mentioned that three basic units are there in the brain: forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. This is the forebrain, this is the midbrain, this is the hindbrain. Understood? So then brain comprising of 5 regions. So we have mentioned telencephalon, diencephalon, mesencephalon, metencephalon, myencephalon. So yes, so these are the 5 parts: telencephalon, diencephalon, mesencephalon, myelencephalon and metencephalon. So according to their embryonic life, So we are going to mention like that: telencephalon, diencephalon, mesencephalon, metencephalon, myeloencephalon. This is the spinal cord cavity, how it is being formed. So yes, telencephalon, it includes all of the cerebral cortex, internal nuclei such as basal ganglia, hippocampus, olfactory bulb and amygdala. So this is the limbic lobe, cingulate gyrus, hippocampus, amygdala, olfactory bulb. So this is called as forebrain part 1. So telencephalon, cerebral cortex, outermost layer of the cerebrum, composing of 2 to 4 millimeter of gray matter, containing up to 6 horizontal layers with the unique neuronal projections: molecular layer, external granule cell layer, external pyramidal cell layer, internal granule cell layer, internal pyramidal cell layer, multiform layer. So molecular, external granule cell, external pyramidal cell, internal granule cell, internal pyramidal cell, multiform. There are 6 layers seen in case of telencephalon. Telencephalon, so we can mention still more functional organization. So here the primary motor cortex, this is the primary motor cortex, this is the motor association area, premotor cortex. These two are associated with muscular movement of the skeletal muscular movement. This is the portion called as central sulcus. Then parietal lobe, this is the frontal lobe, this is the parietal lobe, primary somatic sensory area, sensory association area, mostly presented in the parietal lobe. Then prefrontal association area, premotor cortex, primary motor cortex presenting in the frontal lobe. Then gustatory cortex, this is the gustatory cortex. This is the portion responsible for the taste sensation. Then olfactory cortex, this is the portion, olfactory cortex, responsible for perception of sense of smell. Then temporal lobe, comprising of auditory cortex, auditory association area. They are associated with process of hearing. Then parietal lobe, occipital lobe, comprising of visual association area, visual cortex associated with vision under visual occipital lobe. These are the functional division. So yes, organization based on physiological function. Area number 4. This is the primary motor cortex. Area number 312. Later on I will discuss about this when I am talking about sensations, receptors. Primary somatosensory cortex. Somatosensory area number 1. Yes, capital letter, Roman letter 1. Yes, 1. So yes, then this is 17. So yes, you have to talk about 17. So this is 17, primary visual cortex. Then 41 and 42. 41 and 42. These are the areas associated with audition. Brodmann's areas. So yes, telencephalon, basically structures relating to basal ganglia, putamen. So this is the putamen, globus pallidus, lateral part and medial part. Then this is the caudate nucleus, and this is thalamus. Then subthalamic nucleus. You have to know about this subthalamic nucleus, substantia nigra. So the teacher, one who is discussing about basal ganglia, will throw light more on these particular issues. So these are associated with the motor control, connections with the motor cortex and the thalamus, regulate initiation and termination of the movement. Some role is played in attention, memory and planning. Understood? So spinal cord we have mentioned already. So mentioned. So in amygdala, hippocampus, amygdala and hippocampus. So this is the fornix. This is corpus callosum, you have already mentioned. Cingulate gyrus, already mentioned. Massa intermedia of thalamus. Then olfactory bulb, this is olfactory bulb. Mammillary body, mammillary body. Yes, an important structure, amygdala, hippocampus, mammillary body. Important structure in the limbic system, you have to know what is the role. Amygdala, part of limbic system, associated with pleasure, fear and addiction, important in forming and storing of memory of emotional events, etc. Amygdala. Then hippocampus, part of limbic system, important in the formation of memories, including spatial and navigation memories, and damage to the hippocampus can result in anterograde amnesia, loss of memory for recent memory, anterograde. So yes, retrograde, past memory. So retrograde and anterograde. So you have to know about that. So diencephalon, which mostly includes thalamus and hypothalamus, then telencephalon and diencephalon, totally forming the forebrain. So this is the thalamus, this is the hypothalamus, cingulate gyrus, basal ganglia, hippocampus, parahippocampal gyrus. This is the medial forebrain bundle. So thalamus, main integrating center for the sensory information. It is the relay center for the sensory input. Receives input from the basal ganglia and cerebellum. It receives information from every part of the brain. Understood? Then hypothalamus. Hypothalamus, main control center. It is the master gland. It is associated with all releasing and inhibiting hormones. That's why it is a master gland. Main control for autonomic nervous system. It is considered as head ganglion of the autonomic nervous system. It is in close association with the pituitary gland, brings about important functions in the endocrine system because it is resulting in the release of the hormone, release as well as inhibition of the hormones. And they are the one which are important because they are containing so many things. Regulation of temperature, regulation of heart rate, regulation of pulse, regulation of respiration, regulation of temperature, everything, and thirst center, hunger center, satiety center, everything is situated in hypothalamus. Then mesencephalon. Mesencephalon, it is the midbrain, tectum of the midbrain, tegmentum of the midbrain, tectum and tegmentum. Tectum, superior colliculi, containing the nuclei of the visual reflexes. Inferior colliculi, you remember, superior colliculi, visual reflexes. Inferior colliculi, auditory reflexes. Then tegmentum. Tegmentum comprising of substantia nigra, releasing dopamine. It is an important neurotransmitter in the basal ganglia. So yes, neurotransmitter. Red nucleus, which is associated with cerebellum. Red nucleus is being connected to the cerebellum. Understood? So then hindbrain or myelencephalon, medulla oblongata, containing ascending, that is sensory, descending or motor tracts connecting the cerebrum to the spinal cord. Most of the spinal cord tracts cross over in the pyramids. So this will be discussed later on. Corticospinal tract, pyramidal tract, extrapyramidal tract, everything. So yes, they are the one which will be regulating breathing, everything. In the hindbrain, we have got every entity. Understood? So then metencephalon, Metencephalon containing pneumotaxic center, which is producing fine tuning of the breathing rate. So this will be discussed during regulation of the blood pressure. Pons containing pneumotaxic center, understood, which fine tunes the breathing rate. And then second one, relays information between cerebellum and cerebrum, small brain and big brain. Cerebellum, feedback center for execution of motor movements. Controls posture and balance. Then reticular formation, nuclei diffusely located through the brainstem and regulates wakefulness and muscle tone. So pons, reticular formation and cerebellum. So yes, so we have to know that CNS is being protected by virtue of skull, by virtue of vertebrae, by virtue of blood-brain barrier, by virtue of cerebrospinal fluid. So yes, meninges are there. So yaar bandare na aitala 3 ನಿಮಿಷ ಆಯ್ತಾ 8 ನಿಮಿಷ. So I will wind up. So this is regarding blood-brain barrier. So blood-brain barrier, you have to know that central nervous system blood vessels prevent paracellular diffusion of macromolecules and ions. So there is blood-brain barrier between blood and the brain. Capillary endothelial cells in the brain are connected by tight junctions to form a physical barrier with the contribution from astrocytes, pericytes and neurons, and they are involved in the specialized transportation. Understood? Specialized transportation. Small or hypophilic molecules and gases can diffuse more easily, particularly carbon dioxide can diffuse easily. Understood? So this is one thing. Only few regions of the brain without blood-brain barrier creates problem for delivery of this thing. So all these things, tagging the drugs and all. Yes, cerebrospinal fluid. So yes, fills ventricles, subarachnoid space, less protein than in plasma. Similar in electrolytes, but more chloride, less calcium and potassium. Acts as a cerebrospinal fluid, acts as a shock absorber. Waste products are removed, regulating the pH, maintains ionic homeostasis. Understood? So anyhow, we have mentioned already peripheral nervous system. So autonomic, wherein parasympathetic, playing a role in the rest and digestion. Sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight. Then somatic nervous system, sensory, afferent neurons and efferent neurons. So this is neuron. So we have already mentioned glial cells, neurons and all those things. So you have to know about this. So I think in the next class, before going to synapse, I will talk something about these neurons and neuroglia, and I will continue with the synapse. So it is okay now? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So you must be missing me, the classroom environment anyhow. Now I am visible to you. Yes? Kindly bear with the situation. Kindly follow the instruction. So you have to follow all these things. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. On Saturday, I will continue with synapse.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. More? Ba. Ba. Close my door. Right. So sorry, madam.